So the other day I was speaking to a friend of mine, and we were talking about the nuances of being a Christian in a highly charged political environment, and and we were talking about how, as a person of faith, um, it's important to vote according to your value system. We have this really beautiful and unique opportunity as Americans to to have a say in the way our country works, and we should take that seriously. But the reality is that politics is downstream from culture. Politics, like religion, is downstream from education, from science, from culture. It is the traditions or the expressions that grow out of those dynamics which God has placed in the world. And so as we grow up and we learn about what's true and what's real and what's good, um, the values that are produced through that are transmitted to us through that process, those become the basis of how we interact with each other, and that's what politics is. And so it's important to be involved, but the question of how to be involved becomes really dramatic. And how do we talk about it? Because, like, traditionally there's been this sense of the whole separation of church and state thing. There's this idea that the church should not try and impose its will on the state, and the state should not try and impose its will on the church, that these are two separate entities. And while that's really a valuable thing, because a totalitarian state which controls the church is very dangerous. A totalitarian and authoritarian church which tries to control the state through using the power of the state to control other people, that is also extremely dangerous. The problem is that most people have lost the ability to understand that the conversation is bigger than that. The conversation is just much, much bigger. The process is bigger. And so when you have a situation where the trying to think of how best to say it. When you have a situation where God has been marginalized in society, then what happens is the institutions themselves, or the traditions themselves, begin to just sweep into the vacuum, and they take the place of true faith. They become their own religious thing. And a lot of that is what we're seeing happening right now with American politics. There are in the 40s, 50s. One of the things that happened in the United States of America was that nationalism swept into the country and swept across the country and replaced religion, pure Christian faith, with this kind of syncretic idea of patriotism as faithful Christianity. And so you weren't a Christian unless you were willing to pledge allegiance to the flag and die for your country. And there was a sense in which you weren't it wasn't just you're not a good American if you're not anti-communism. It was you're not a good Christian if you're not anti-communism. And everything kind of got tied up with this somewhat conservative kind of idea about who America was, what made America great, and then that was Christianity. And that was dangerous. That was very dangerous, not because those ideas were bad, but because when you tie the faith to politics in that way, it's dangerous. You miss the gospel in an effort to do the right things. And now we're seeing the other side of that, where there are Christians who are embracing certain liberal leaning. I hesitate to use the word liberal, but right now there's a real argument about what exactly to call all of it. A progressive leaning ideology that uses words like social justice, but in the same way that the other used words like patriotism. There is a danger when politics and religion begin to become tied together, and it's because at the deep root of what we're talking about, we're dealing with the basic assumptions that kind of shape how we understand what is real and true and good. There's an illustration that I've often used here at Pine Run of the tree. You get a good apple tree, it bears fruit. So when you see an apple tree, generally what you see is you see the trunk, and you see the branches, and you see the apples. And we think of the apple tree in that way. And when we think of how the apple tree produces fruit, we know that the trunk has to be healthy, and the branches have to be healthy, and the apples are there. And life is a lot like that. Like, we see the fruit of life. Politics is the fruit of life. And we often understand that the fruit of life flows from a tree that is healthy. And so we inspect the trunk, and we make sure that nothing has cut into it or hurt it, or we're looking at the branches to make sure that everything is structurally sound, that nothing has happened from blight or from weather and different things like that. The trunk is that the processes of education, of science, of culture, where we have transmitted truth and reality and goodness from one generation to the next so that we can produce good fruit. Politics, religion. But what we don't look at is the root system. We don't look at it because it's under the ground. Can't really inspect it because it's hidden from sight. But it is the root system that actually draws life out of the ground and into the tree. It is the root system which determines ultimately whether or not the tree will be healthy. Barring any environmental factors, that come against the tree. If the root system is healthy, the tree will be healthy. In some cases, even with environmental factors, if the root system is healthy, the tree will be healthy. But if the root system's unhealthy, it doesn't matter. Our basic assumptions, the way in which we frame our understanding of the world, these things precede the processes of education and science and culture. These things precede the systems by which those things are implemented. The root system precedes the process of transmission. The root system precedes the fruit. So while most people focus on the fruit, and most people focus on politics, religion, the Christian faith is fundamentally about the root. The other stuff is important too, but like Jesus said, if you'll abide in me, I'll abide in you, and then you'll bear much fruit. It's about the root. We need to understand that in this political culture that we're living in, where things are crazy right now, it is because there are issues with the root of how people think. And ultimately, our faith is about transforming the root. That's why Jesus told Nicodemus, you must be born again. Your whole world has to change. The way you frame and understand everything has to change. Because until it changes, the fruit will be what it's always been. And if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. And that is not what God wants. So if you're frustrated right now looking at the political system, you keep that in mind. Politics are crazy, I know. People are angry, but it'll be okay. Because God's got it under control. Our part in all of this is to engage people in the root of how they think, and to bring them to the transforming love of Christ, and to allow Him to birth in them something new, a life that is truly life. So that's what I'm thinking about this morning. Anyway, shalom.